ever happened to you when you're practicing and you know, technically speaking, that based on certain kinds of musical patterns, it's best to use rotation or some sort of circular gesture or an up-down arm movement, but when you practice it, it just doesn't turn out quite the way you want it to. That's exactly what we're going to talk about in this video, where I'm going to explain that sometimes we have to experiment, and even though it doesn't quite make musical or technical sense, sometimes a different kind of physical motion can be the thing that makes a passage play really, really smoothly and fixes those technical issues. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So I'm going to show you a couple different examples about how combining two different kind of technical movements or gestures together, or just using a different movement, can actually fix technical places in a passage. So there's this suite by Respighi that I've been playing, and hopefully I'm going to perform soon. And there's this passage towards the end of the first page, and I'm going to play it slowly. And basically, we have this. Okay, so in the right hand, I have all of these double notes, or these intervals. And there's a couple different ways we could think about this, okay? So we could think, well, we kind of have these intervals going up here. It's not a double third scale, but it's similar enough that maybe if I could think about rotating back and forth, maybe that would fix it. But of course, as I practice that in, it doesn't quite seem right. It just feels a little awkward, okay? So if I play that again, it just doesn't quite do it. I feel like I get stuck in places. Okay, well, sometimes when we have parallel intervals, let's say thirds or something like that, I could use a little bit of, circular motion, okay, those changes of directions. And this has that. So what if I try a circle like that? Let's see. And then I practice that in, okay? So I practice, okay? Still doesn't feel quite right, okay? Well, the only other option we kind of have, basically, is kind of a down-up sort of thing, okay? So I can go down, up, down, up. And essentially, these are just different ways of shifting my weight and my hands and arms from key to key, okay? So motion guides my fingers. What I found is, even though it's the last thing I tried, it's the last thing I thought of because of the context of the musical patterns. Do you see how immediately that sounds better? Okay, so as I play that, oh, it's kind of like an up-down. Now, what you also notice there, okay, is there's a slight sort of circular gesture there. So as I do that, I am sort of shifting like this, right? So I am using almost a hint of a circle there. And that's what I was talking about when we combine two different movements together. So I think that this is a great example about how important experimentation is when we practice. We can learn all of these technical things, but at the end of the day, it depends on the music. Not just technically, but also musically. Another example, the last piece from this suite by Respighi, this beautiful serenade at the end, and it has these beautiful arranged chords. We have this. Okay, it's a really, really beautiful piece. I love this piece. But you'll notice we have all these rolled chords. Okay, so we have this. And for the most part, I'm kind of holding on to the top note. Oops, that was a little sloppy there. Okay, because the top note is what the melody is. However, how am I going to roll that chord? I mean, this seems kind of simple because really I want that top note to be loudest. And this example is for looking at the musical context and thinking, how do I want it to sound? So if I have a rolled chord, we could just say that's rotation, okay? I would want to use some sort of rotational movement like this. But what happens is the top note sounds a little too punchy, and I feel like it doesn't have that the sound that I want. So what I can try is, what if I use a little bit more of a circle, okay? Now this has another benefit too, because the melody goes, it goes D, like so, okay? So the upbeats, right here, upbeat, excuse me, and then upbeat here, okay? So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, okay? I don't want those to sound too heavy, so I want to use a little bit of wrist motion up and then down like this. The circle works perfect for that, because as I do that, down, or I go sort of circle around and then I go down, down, and then I circle again, right? So it allows me to have a little bit more give and take with the sound and the shape of the melody. Up and down like this, and then I can really control those notes a little much better and get a better sound. So it's not always just about a technical problem that we're trying to solve, of course. This is what can take up a lot of our practicing, but it's also musical. So this is where we want to marry these two ideas of technical solutions and figuring out what kind of movements or gestures or motions or what kind of positions of the hands and fingers are most effective to play something. But that has to be in the service of making something sound the way I want. So if I just think, rotating across, obviously I'm not holding on to those notes. Okay, so I could try that. It's hard to get that really delicate ebb and flow. So we have this. So sometimes using a little bit more wrist motion, which changes the amount of weight that's going into the keys and sort of changes the sound a little bit. What that does is it creates this much more beautiful sound that I can control much more. We want to think about the technical concepts that we're using and how that can help. And sometimes experimenting is the most helpful thing that we can do when we practice, okay? If you're like, okay, I know rotation, that's sort of the basic concept here. Well, rotation, a circle has rotation in it. You'll notice that there's a little bit of rotation there. So a circle itself is sort of like taking multiple ideas and kind of combining them together. But you want to think about that, okay, experiment. But then you also have to really think about the sound. If you change something just a little bit, that can just have the most beautiful repercussions in the music itself. And ultimately, we want to get to a point where we can experiment enough with the motions that we're using so that we can actually create music. Not just think of things on a technical level, but actually on a musical level. And that's what really opens up our playing so that we can be expressive and musical while still having the technique really grounded and solid so that things are free and easy and there's no tension in sight. So I hope that was interesting. I hope that made sense. If you guys have any questions, make sure and put them in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.